I want to say welcome to everybody, and happy Super Bowl Sunday. And hope you got some places you're going. Go Seahawks, because I don't root for no Chiefs. That's right, I went there. I'm just kidding. I really don't care who wins. I just hope it's not like a 49-8 score like it was last year, you know, where you like turn it off at halftime because it's such a terrible game. So if you don't have a place to go, you're going to hear about some places you might be able to hit tonight for your Super Bowl party or something. But hope you have a safe plan for tonight and hope you have a great time. Today's going to be a little bit of a unique day because today we're going to be taking off from our series to talk about something that's just so essential and unbelievably foundational to the movement of our church as we go forward. If you're a first-time guest or you're just coming in, maybe you haven't been here for a while, we like to teach in series. Usually that's 3, 4, maybe 5 messages that we string together to talk about one big idea. And we do that for one big reason, and the big reason is because it helps us remember what we actually teach. As Pastor Scott just alluded to a moment ago, last month we did a series called The Power of One for our campaign. You can still see the banners on each side, so we want to keep it in front of you. But you remember the one thing that he wanted us to walk away with every week was that whatever God can do in you, God wants to do through you, right? And the reason why you remember that so well is because we talked about it for 4 weeks, right? And so that's usually why we like to string messages together in a series. But today's just going to be a little unique. We're going to talk about something that's foundational to our church today. So if you're a first-time guest, you've come to visit on a great day, you're going to hear a little bit about what makes our church tick. You're going to hear a little about what moves our church forward to accomplish our mission. And if you're a regular attender or a part of our journey, you've come on a great day. You can kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy the day. I believe you're going to leave feeling encouraged. I believe you're going to leave here today going, man, that right there, that's why I'm a part of Journey Church right there. And so as we get started today, I was thinking about this message this week and just kind of going over it in my mind. And I thought to myself, you know, if I could take this whole teaching this morning, if I could bundle it all up and if I could put it into a book and slap a title on the cover of it, the title that I would choose to put on the front of it would be The Tension of Connection. The tension of connection. If you're taking notes on the back of your program, there's a little section there. If you want to take some notes this morning, I encourage you to do that. The tension of connection. And I was thinking about it, and with my wife's permission, I can tell you this. My wife does on most mornings what many of you do. She wakes up in the morning, and when her alarm clock goes off, she reaches over and hits her snooze button once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, amen? And so she gets up finally with her alarm, and she goes about her morning routine. She gets ready for the day, and as she goes out the door, she gets in the car, and on her way to work, she will drive through our local area Starbucks. And she will get whatever in the world it is that she gets. I'm not a coffee person, so whatever the mocha latte, frappuccino, cappuccino, any kind of Eno kind of a thing, you know, that you get at Starbucks. Like, for me, Starbucks provides me with hot chocolate in the wintertime and strawberries and cream in the summertime, okay? That's it. That's as far as the Starbucks menu goes for me. Some of you frequent there so often, you're like frothing at the mouth, right? Just thinking about it. Thinking of the froth that will be on whatever drink you're getting tomorrow morning because now you're dying for it and craving it. You're welcome. I should get a cut of that, you know, little commercial there. But it's interesting because whenever you go to Starbucks, sometimes, especially if you're a frequent customer of them, maybe perhaps you've seen a card that they will have on their counter, sometimes usually up by their register. And this is what the front of the card says. You can see it on the screen. On the front of it, it says, create, make a difference in someone's day. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Sounds nice and inspiring. Okay, let me turn that over. Let me see what the back says. And the back of it reads this way. It says, when you work at Starbucks. Okay? Nothing like a little job opening here. When you work at Starbucks, you can make a difference in someone's day by creating an environment where neighbors and friends can get together and reconnect while enjoying a great coffee experience. What an interesting way of saying, hey, help wanted. Right? And I find it interesting because Starbucks sees their corporate purpose, part of their corporate purpose, as creating environments that are so conducive for connection, where people can connect with one another and have conversations so deeply with one another that it literally changes that person's life. I mean, have you ever had a Starbucks conversation before? I would say most of us, if not all of us in this room, have had a Starbucks conversation before where maybe you're out shopping one day and you run into somebody you haven't seen in quite a while and you start talking. It's like, hey, let's sit down, let's go catch up. Hey, well, there's a Starbucks right down the street. Let's go sit down, let's catch up, let's go get a cup of coffee together. Or maybe it's something more serious than that, and it's like, you know, somebody that comes up to you and they're real, you know, downtrodden. They're going, man, I really need to talk to you. You know, you want to go to Starbucks? You want to meet me there tomorrow morning, like 7 o'clock before work? Right? I mean, so no matter what extreme it is, we've all experienced those connections at Starbucks. When we think of Starbucks, we think coffee and we think conversations, right? Because that's the environment that they do. What Starbucks does is they sell coffee in order to promote an environment of connection. And we're buying in, and we're buying in big. In 2013 alone, Starbucks' revenue was just shy of $15 billion. That's billion, like with a B. That's a lot of cups of coffee. I mean, it's not like they're selling Maseratis or something, for like $75,000, $80,000. They're selling cups of coffee, which are pretty expensive, I've heard. But that's all that they do. And they made almost $15 billion. A few years ago, they were branded as one of the top 10 most trusted brands in the world. Not bad for a company who sells ground up beans mixed with milk, water, and sugar, am I right? Not too bad. What Starbucks does is it sells coffee to promote an experience of connection. And they do this, and the reason why they've been so successful, and why all other coffee companies now copy Starbucks, the reason why they've been so successful is because they know we live in a culture today that is craving relationships. I read a book a couple of weeks ago where the author, his wife, is an interior decorator. And she was telling him about this article that she had read about how architects are starting to design our homes. And she said architects are intentionally designing our homes now to promote privacy and seclusion rather than connection. I want you to think about that. They're designing our homes to promote seclusion and privacy rather than connection in the home. I mean, think about it. If we went to the average American family on an average evening throughout the week, chances are pretty high we'd find one person sitting in the living room watching TV, right? We'd find another person in the den or some other room watching television or reading a book or doing something else because they don't really want to watch what they're watching, so they go into another room. And then perhaps you've got all the kids or teenagers up in their own bedrooms playing video games or watching TV or reading a book or doing homework or something somewhere else. And so you have all these people that basically within families, most families have single rooms for everybody in the family. And then some houses even have their own bathrooms for every single room. And so like every single person in the family can get up in the morning, take their shower, go through their morning routine, and the only time they ever even connect in the morning before they rush out the door grabbing a Pop-Tart on the way is rushing through the kitchen to say, hope you have a great day. Now I'm not saying that that's wrong, but what I'm simply trying to do is just making an observation that I think all of us feel, don't we? We all observe that, or we perhaps have experienced that in our own families. We recognize, wow, yeah, my home really isn't even built for connection. It promotes more privacy and seclusion than it does connection in my home. Not so a few years ago. A few years ago, and decades in the past, there were these magical little areas that were attached to the front of our houses called front porches. How many of you have ever heard of one before? How many of you actually remember having a front porch when you were growing up as a kid? Yeah, I do. We had a huge, gigantic front porch. And the front porch at that point in time was the connection point for the family with the neighborhood and people walking by. And decades in the past, families would walk in their neighborhoods, go on walks, and kids would ride their bikes and all these things. And people would sit on their front porches in order to strike up conversations with their neighbors as they passed by. You'd be walking down the street and, oh, there's Jimbo and Mary Ann or something. And they're sitting on their front porch and you start talking and one thing leads to another, and pretty soon you find yourself being invited up onto the front porch to take a seat and to sit down and have a cold beverage and sit down and talk about the big issues of the day or what's going on in your life and things like that while the kids played in the front yard or rode their bikes up and down the street. Fast forward now to the 21st century. I would dare say that most of us probably don't even have a front porch. Or we have a sorry excuse for one. If your house is anything like mine, my front porch is about this wide and it's about that deep. Basically, it's like a small slab of concrete that you can step up onto before you ring the doorbell to come into my house, right? It's like I can't even hardly fit my family on our front porch. I don't even like calling it front porch because that's not even really what it is. But think about the average American today. What we normally do is after a long, hard day of work, after a long, overcrowded commute coming home, we roll up into our driveway, and even if we have a neighbor that's out like watering their grass or something next door, we kind of just like give them the nod, like, yeah, I acknowledge you're here, but please don't come over and talk to me because I just want to hit my garage door opener, roll up into my garage, turn off the car, hit the garage door button again so it closes behind me. Then I can retreat into the privacy of my home, make dinner, and then sit down and relax in front of the television. Hopefully you won't come over and talk to me, right? And if we do go outside, it's not to the front porch so that we can engage our neighbors and people passing by. We retreat to the decks that we built on the backs of our houses so that we can enjoy the outdoors, but we can enjoy it with isolation. Because the truth of the matter is after a long, hard day at work, after a long, overcrowded commute, we don't want to see more of people. We want to see less of people, don't we? In the midst of our overcrowded commutes, in the midst of our overcrowded, work schedules and everything, we don't want to see more of people. We want to see less of them. We want to avoid people at all costs. And cost us. It does, and it has. A number of years ago, George Gallup did a poll. And we hear about Gallup polls all the time, right? Especially around election seasons. And so George Gallup did a poll, and he came out after this poll, and he said, I quote, he said, "Americans are among the loneliest people in the world." I want you to think about that for a minute. Americans are among the loneliest people in the world. That's like hard for me to even compute, right? I mean, because we live in a world where we have everything surrounding us. We have everything that we could possibly want at our fingertips, don't we? I mean, we make more money than just about anyone else in the world. We have bigger, better homes than anyone else in the world. We have bigger, better cars than anyone else in the world. We have just about more opportunity than anyone else in the world. And yet, in the midst of all of this stuff, we have everything at our disposal. In the midst of our, overcrowded, jam-packed housing additions where houses are like this far on top of each other, in the midst of even crowded rooms, we feel alone. And we're amongst the loneliest people in the world. And as I prepared for this week and I was thinking about some of these things, I thought to myself, is this what God intended for us? Is this really what God intended? When He made mankind, did He intend for us to be surrounded by a sea of humanity and yet never really be able to cash in on the benefits of deep personal connections and relationships? Is that really what God intended for us? And this is why this whole idea of connection is so foundational to the mission of our church at Journey Church. If you recall, normally we have our banners for our purposes up here on each side. So instead of our banners, I put it up on the screen for us. Remember, say our purpose with us. Most of you know it by heart. It's to give, come on, say it with me, everyone, everywhere, every reason to want to follow Jesus, right? We want to give everyone, everywhere, every reason to want to follow Jesus. Now what we have to remember and what we have to understand is that it's not just enough to throw out a nice little vision statement. This is where many organizations and churches sometimes even fail at getting their mission across to their churches, to their congregations, because they'll come up with a nice phrase, but then they don't ever say how we're actually going to accomplish it. And we understand that. And so at Journey, we have 4 core values, or 4 core behaviors, whatever you want to call them. I like to actually call them 4 core behaviors because they're actions. They're things that we do that help us to know. They provide a litmus test, and they tell us how well we're accomplishing our vision. And here's what those 4 things are. You can see them on the screen. We invite, we connect, we coach, and we involve. We invite people into a relationship with Christ. We connect them within the body of Christ with other Christians. We coach them to become fully devoted followers of Christ. And lastly, we involve them in the ministry of the church. Those are the 4 key things that if we're inviting people like crazy, if we are coaching people and doing it well, if we are involving people in the ministry, but if we're not connecting with people, then ultimately we're not really fulfilling the vision that God has given us for this church and for this community. We have to have all 4 of these in balance. And if you recall, I know this is going back just a little bit for us, but back in, I believe it was October, I did a teaching called The Cues to Who. I don't know if maybe some of you remember that title or not, but certainly you may remember we gave you these little yellow strings. How many of you remember your string? We encourage you to take your string and put it in your Bible, or to tape it to your computer monitor, or put it on the dashboard of your car, or whatever it might be. And we focused in and talked about the first core behavior. We talked about inviting. And we talked about the fact that most of us, if not all of us, got here to Journey primarily the same way. It was through an invitation. Someone invited us to come, and we came, and we've experienced Christ. And we're so grateful that we came. We're so grateful because God has rescued us. God has redeemed us. He's forgiven us. He's renewed us. He's adopted us into the family of God. And not only that, but God has revolutionized our lives. He's changed our marriages. He's changed our parenting. He's changed how we view life. He's given us purpose and value and meaning that we didn't have before we came to know Christ. But even though God has changed our lives, sometimes we struggle with, who should I invite? I want to invite people, but who should I invite? How should I invite? And so we had you tie 3 knots, K-N-O-T. We had you tie 3 knots to give you 3 cues that should cue you to know, okay, this is who I should invite. And the first knot, the first cue, was that things are not going well in somebody's life. Things were not going well. Maybe you're sitting in a break room somewhere, and somebody comes in and you start talking, and they're like, man, things just ain't going well. I mean, my marriage is falling apart. I've got a bad financial situation going on. This isn't going right. I'm not healthy in my body. This is going bad. Things are not going well. That should be a cue to say, hey, you know what? I want to tell that person, and I need to tell that person my story. I need to tell them, hey, you know what? At some point in time, things weren't going well in my life either. But you know, I came and I experienced Jesus Christ, and because Christ is a part of my life, now my life has been dramatically changed. God gave me strength. God helped me to see with a different perspective of the struggles that I was facing, and this and that. And you just share your story with them and say, you know what, why don't you come to church with me this Sunday? I mean, why don't you just come to church and see what God can do in your life? The second cue is that maybe they're not prepared for something. Maybe they just moved into the area, and you're going on a walk with your family, and you come across them, maybe they're just moving in, and they're sitting there going, man, we just moved here, and we were not prepared for what it was going to be like to live in a city of 250,000 people and not know a single one of them. We were not prepared for that feeling. Or maybe it's somebody that's just getting married. Or maybe it's an unplanned pregnancy. Or maybe it's somebody, that's failing in their classes in school, and now they got to tell their parents about it, right? I mean, maybe it's something like that, and that gives you the opportunity. That should give you a cue to say, hey, you know what? At some point in time in my life, I wasn't prepared for something. But I'm a part of this church. It's called Journey Church. And we meet every single week. And you know what? When I had something that I wasn't planning for, man, that church, the people just surrounded me. They encouraged me. They uplifted me. They helped me see me through that time period. I just want to invite you. Why don't you just come and see what God can do in your life? And the third thing, the third knock, was maybe they're just not involved in church. Maybe they're just not in church. Maybe things are going well for them, but they're just not involved in church anywhere. You see, for some of you, and maybe even for many of you, at some point in time in your life, you could never have imagined giving up a Sunday morning to be here at church. Could you? Yeah, I hear that, amen. And you know what? That's the honest truth, right? I mean, because Sunday morning is like your day to have off, right? Sunday morning, you want to sleep in on Sunday morning, or you want to take the boat out to the lake, or you want to go hiking, or you want to do something with your family, or something like that. But somebody invited you, and you came, and you experienced Christ so powerfully in your life that now you can't imagine not being here on a Sunday morning. It's so much a part of your weekly routine, you don't even think about coming. You just wake up Sunday morning and show up because of what God has done in your life, because you received an invitation. That first time, the cues to who, I encourage you, go back and listen to that whole message if you want to hear more about it. You can see it on our website, or you can go to our YouTube channel, Church on a Journey, where we put up our videos for our teachings on Sunday morning if you're more of a visual person. But I encourage you to go back and do that. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to move, and we're kind of going to leapfrog from October to the 1st of February. And we're going to jump from this idea of invitation, and we're going to jump to the second behavior, which is connection. Now, I realize that everyone in the room is wired differently. I realize that everybody in the room has different personalities. Some are just incredibly outgoing, like, man, I want to know everybody in the room, and you need to know me, And then there's other people that are kind of like, I don't really want to know anybody yet. Just let me be here for like a month or two until I get comfortable with the surrounding, and then I'll meet like one or two people, right? And that's okay, and whatever extreme you're on of the personality waiver, I think that all of us feel this tension of connection. This idea that on one hand we know that we want to connect, that we know that we even need to connect. We crave it and we desire it, but on the other hand, on the other side of the tension, we know we live in a culture today that's really not conducive for connection. I mean, even our own homes are designed against us to connect well with our families and with the outside world. I mean, we don't even have front porches anymore. Even like social media and stuff, which I love. I'm a big part of social media. But the thing is sometimes it can deceive us into kind of giving us the illusion of connection, when in fact it doesn't give connection, it gives jealousy. Because people see all the good stuff that everybody's posting about their life and looking at their own and going, well, my life ain't that good, my life must be terrible. And so it gives us this false illusion of connection. And so we feel this tension between both of these things of going, I know that I need it and I know that I want it, but how do I get it? And so the question that I want us to answer through the last remaining minutes that we have is to simply answer the question, what does God have to say about this tension of connection? So with that in mind, I want you to open your Bibles this morning to the easiest book in the Bible to find. It's the very first one, the book of Genesis, chapter 2. Genesis, chapter 2. And as you're turning there, we're just going to look at a verse this morning that I think tells us exactly what God's answer to that question is, of what He thinks about this tension of connection and how important it is. But as you're turning there, maybe you're here this morning and maybe you're unfamiliar with the Bible, maybe you haven't even read Genesis chapter 1 or 2 before. I hope today will inspire you to do so. So I just want to make sure and bring us all up to speed so we all know what's happening here in Genesis chapter 2. And what happens in Genesis 1 is we have what's called the creation account. And the creation account made the heavens and the earth and filling them with all life and everything in it. And what's interesting about Genesis 1 and the whole creation account is there's this ebb and flow that goes through this entire first chapter of the creation account, this creation story. Then after each time period of creation, there's this phrase that the writer of Genesis throws out there at the very end of each creation. It's sort of like a tide going in and out. Creation, and then there's this phrase. Creation, and then there's this phrase. And so God creates, and then at the end of each period, God says it is good. It's good. So God creates the heavens and the earth. He creates light, and God sees that the light is good. He creates the sky, and He separates the sky from the land and all these things, and God saw that it was good. And then God creates, animals and fish and things that live in the ocean, and God saw that it was good. And then God creates the sun and the moon and the stars to govern the day and the night, and God saw that it was good. And then God creates livestock and animals and insects and things that crawl along the ground, and God saw that it was good. And finally, in the last period of creation, God takes the dust of the earth. He forms it into the man. And He breathes the breath of life into it. And imparts the imago Dei, the image of God, upon the man. Setting him as the crowning jewel of all creation that makes us unique from any and all other creation that God has made. The thing that makes us, we may mourn when a dog dies, but we don't mourn the same way when a child dies. Because we understand the image of God, the intrinsic human value that God has placed upon us. And God sets man as the crowning jewel to rule over the creation, to manage it, to steward it in the proper way. And God changes the phrase. Everything else is, it's good, it's good, it's good. But when God sets man in his place, He says, it is very good. Then we get to Genesis chapter 2. And something very unexpected happens. God states something that is really kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And this is what the scripture says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. I'm just going to read part of it first, and then we'll come to the second part. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good. What? Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute, God. Okay, you created everything. You said it's good, it's good, it's good. Okay, you got this. Okay, that's good. Okay, now you created man. You said it's very good. Now all of a sudden something is not good? So what is it that's not good? And it continues on. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. Now, I find so interesting about this passage is if you've ever been to a wedding before, you've heard this verse cited in a wedding in the context of marriage. And rightly so, certainly speaking of that. But I think that the implications of this verse go far beyond just an affirmation of marriage, particularly between a man and a woman. Make that clear. I think the implications go far beyond it, because at the core of this verse, at the core of it, it shows us how important and how high on God's priority list relationships between people are. And I think marriage is the ultimate illustration of that reality. So rightly so, it's speaking of marriage here. But I think that the implications at its core, it goes far beyond it to tell us how high on God's priority list relationships really are. When you think about it in the New Testament, a teacher of the law, a very learned man, comes up to Jesus and he says, Jesus, what is the most important law of the law of Moses? What's the most important thing? In other words, out of the 613 laws that God has given us, all these things are important to God, but out of all these things, which one is the most important? Pretty tough question, isn't it? I wonder how any one of us would have answered it. And I imagine Jesus really not even having to think about it. That Jesus just begins to talk and he says, you know what, the most important thing is to love the Lord your God. With all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. That's the most important. But he continues on, and he says, but the second is equal to it. It's just as important as the first. And it's that you love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah, you know it. In other words, Jesus is basically telling this teacher of the law, he says, listen, the most important thing to God is your relationship with Him and your relationship with people. That is the most important thing to God. That is how you define spiritual growth even. If you're growing and you're coming to know God more, but your relationship with people stink because you're just a jerk, then there's something that's not going on right in your spiritual life, right? If you want to grow spiritually, then you need to grow relationally with others. And Jesus is saying, listen, the most important thing to God is your relationship with Him and your relationship with others. It shows us how important, how high on God's priority list relationships really are. Now, I want you to think about at what point God is stating this in Genesis chapter 2. This is pre-Genesis chapter 3, isn't it? For those of you that are familiar with the Bible, Genesis chapter 3, from that point forward, that's where Adam and Eve fall. It's where they sin against God. It's where they disobey God, and the spirit within them dies. And that's why Christ has to come at some point in the future to be able to take our place and take our punishment for our sin upon himself so that we can be put right in our relationship with God. That's Genesis 3 and onward. But this statement is taking place in Genesis 2. Adam is in a state of perfection at this point. He is in a state where he has not sinned. There is no disobedience. He is in perfect relationship with God. He is in perfect communion with his Maker and his Creator. Not only is he in perfect relationship with God, but he's in perfect relationship with creation. It's in Genesis 3 that the fall of man brings upon the curse of nature, and creation itself falls into decay. At this point, Adam is still in perfect relationship with all of creation. It's not until Genesis 3 that God puts the fear of man upon all of creation. I kind of almost imagine Adam in Genesis 2 and 1 instead of kind of being like the real Disney princess, right? I mean, he's singing in the garden, all of a sudden a bird comes down and starts singing with him, you know? I mean, it's like as wonderful as that might be. Like there was no fear of man upon creation. In fact, God even has the animals pass in front of Adam, and Adam names them, which doesn't really seem like a big deal to us, but in that time period when it was written, if you named something, it means that you had authority over it. It means that you had leadership over it. And so it's God's way of saying, look, I have put you in charge over all creation. Everything was perfect. And yet, the word that God chooses to describe the man is alone. And he says, it's not good. I love what John Ortberg, who's a great Christian author and pastor, has written about this verse. Here's what he says. You can see it on the screen. He writes, he says, sometimes in church circles, when people feel lonely, we will tell them not to expect too much from human relationships. That there is inside every human being a God-shaped void that no other person can fill. And that is true. But apparently, according to the writer of Genesis, God creates inside this man a kind of human-shaped void that God himself will not fill. No substitute will fill this need in you for human relationship. Not busyness, not books, not even God himself. Even though this man was in a state of sinless perfection, he was alone, and it was not good. What a powerful statement. If there's anything that I could ask you this morning, I would want to ask you if we know what God has to say about being alone. If God would say aloneness is not good. If that's true, then why is it that we so often choose to live in isolation? If we know that God says it's not good to be alone, and God in this case prepares and creates a helpmate for Adam. But I think the implication for us this morning is if we know that God says it's not good to be alone, then why is it that we so often choose to live in isolation and privacy from others? If there's one thing that I want you to do today, here's your homework that I want you to take home from today. This is something that I want you to do today. I want you to do this exercise today, okay? When are you supposed to do it?
Today.
Today, very good, okay. I don't want you to wait till tomorrow because then you're going to forget all about it, and on your way to work you're going to think, hey, he asked me to do something. Oh, he almost got me. Right? I mean, he almost sucked me in, okay? Now, so I want you to do this today, okay? I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I'm not trying to manipulate you or anything like that. But this is an unbelief. I want you to ask yourself a question that's about to be on the screen, not yet. But I want you to ask yourself a question. And I want you to carve out just a few moments today and find out what the answer to this question is. And I'm going to tell you why it's so important that we answer this question. Here's the question. You see it on the screen. This is what I want you to do. Ask yourself the question. What is it that keeps me from developing close personal relationships? Write it down if you need to. Take a picture. Yeah, go ahead. It's fine. Ask yourself that question and answer. What is it that keeps me from developing close personal relationships? And I realize that all of you are smart people, and I'm sure you can sit down and you can figure it out for yourself. But I just want to give you some examples this morning, maybe to just get the juices going, just to get the gears turning. I have to warn you, though, some of these things are a little embarrassing. Some of them you might identify with and you might say, yeah, that's me, but I'm a little ashamed of that. This isn't going to necessarily be the easiest exercise to do, but it's an unbelievably important one to do, and I'll tell you why here in just a moment. Maybe for some of you here today, some of these examples, maybe you're sitting here going, well, the reason why I don't develop close personal relationships is because I've been hurt. I've been hurt. And that's why I don't develop close personal relationships. I used to be close with people in the past. I used to be able to engage in deep, close personal relationships. But, I've been there. I've done that. I've got the t-shirt, and it's got a big burn mark right in the middle of it. Right over top of my heart. It may not be a good thing for me to be alone, but it sure is a heck of a lot less painful. For some of you, you might say, I've been hurt, and that's why I've developed close personal relationships. Others of you, maybe you might say, well, it's just not because I'm just not an open person. I just don't like making myself vulnerable to people. It makes me feel weak, and I would rather appear strong. It makes me appear as though I don't have everything together in my life, and I want to appear as though I do have everything together in my life. I don't like being open with people, and that's why I don't connect relationally with others. Maybe for some of you, you might say it's because I'm embarrassed. I'm afraid. Because if you really got to know me, if I really showed you who I was, if you really saw my true colors, if you really knew my past, if you really knew who I was deep down inside, then you wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. So I'll just keep myself private and keep you at arm's length, because if you really knew me, you wouldn't want to get to know me anymore. Maybe for some of you, you might say it's my personality. I really want to connect with people. I really want to connect and have deep personal relationships and benefit from those things. But the truth is my personality I just naturally keep people outside. I naturally am just not an outgoing person. I'm very shy. And I have to learn to work through those things. Whatever your reason might be, it's unbelievably important for you to be able to work through this question and to be able to ask God with the help of His Spirit to help you work through it and then work past and work through that issue of whatever it is that keeps you from developing close personal relationships. Because whatever it is, whatever that thing is, when you identify, whatever it is, if we don't ask the Spirit of God to help us work through those things, then that thing will be the thing that keeps you from being the most effective that you could be in this life. That thing will be the thing that keeps you from accomplishing everything that God has for you to accomplish in this life. Because everything, I would say 99.9% of everything that God wants you to do involves people. It involves relationships. It involves, right? I mean, the most important thing to God is your relationship with Him and your relationship with people. Now here's what my advice to you today. Maybe you're sitting here going, okay, yeah, I've identified what it is. Maybe even one of those as an example. It could be something different for all of us in the room. But maybe when you identify, you go, okay, well, let me work through this issue. And then once I work through it and I get healing from it or whatever it is that I need to do, once I figure out how to work past it, then I'll engage in deep relationships. And I would encourage you not to do that. And here's the reason why. Let me illustrate this way. Several years ago, my dad had cancer growing out of his spine. Pretty crazy, and it was in a place where they couldn't just cut it out. They said, okay, here's what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a 15-hour surgery. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay you on your back and we're going to go in one side and we're going to remove 2 vertebrae from your spine without severing your spinal cord. And we're going to completely remove 2 vertebrae so your spine will be in 2 pieces. And then we're going to roll you over and we're going to rebuild 2 vertebrae out of steel and rods or whatever else that they put. And after a 15-hour surgery, guess about how long it took for the physical therapist to come in to get him up and start having him walk? About 48 hours. 48 hours after having his spinal cord cut basically in 2 and rebuilt, in less than 2 days they had him up standing. And I was there for some of the physical therapy, and so you've got these physical therapy. Man, if you're going into physical therapy, if you're a college student, I don't know if anybody's going into that, or if you are, God bless you. I'm telling you what, you have a tough job to do. Because those people would come in and they've got a smile on their face, and you could see just unbelievable amounts of pain. And they're saying, okay, Mike, I know it's painful, but listen, man, you got to sit up. Come on, let's do this. Come on, you can do it. Come on, let's work. Yeah. Okay, there you go. That's awesome. Okay, you know what? We're going to swing your feet out. Okay, I know it's painful, Mike. I know it hurts. I know it's painful, but we're going to stand up. Oh, yeah, I know. You're going to be able to do this, man. You're going to be able to do this. You can get through this because you've got to get the blood pumping through those parts of your body so that healing can begin to take place more quickly. You can't just lay in the bed until you're completely better, because you won't get completely better. It will take forever for you to get better. You got to get the blood pumping. So don't wait. Start doing it now, even though it's painful. And that's what I would advise for you. If whatever it is that's keeping you from developing close personal relationships,
When you figure it out, don't let that thing stop you and say, well, I'll wait till I get all better. I'll just lay in the bed until I'm better, because you'll lay in the bed the rest of your life. You have got to, even though it's painful, even though it may be shameful, even though it may be embarrassing, stretch yourself like a rubber band and say, God, I'm going to get up out of this bed. And I'm going to tell you something. We're going to give you a tool today at the end of this experience that will help you do that. It's so important that you figure out the answer to that question. Because remember, Adam was in a state of perfection, and yet God said he's still alone, and it's not a good thing. Maybe you're here this morning and you say, you know what? All that relationship stuff is like for the women. All that relationship stuff is like for feminist men that like to sit around campfires and hold hands and kumbaya and play their band. That's not my cup of tea, okay? I'm not a touchy-feely kind of guy. I understand that and I get that. And certainly that's not the type of picture that I'm trying to promote for you. Maybe you're here this morning and say, I don't need relationships. What I need is a job. What I need is a car to get me to that job. And what I need is like a relationship with somebody who's a lot better looking than me, so I look really good to everybody else. Right? Those are the three things, man. If I just have those three things, man, my life is good. But here's what I would respond to that. I used to think that way when I was younger. I'm an introvert, so I like to keep people at a distance. Makes me feel safe, makes me feel uncomfortable to get too close with people too quickly. That's part of my personality. That's part of the thing that I have to work through in order to build close personal relationships. So maybe some of you might identify with that. But what I used to think when I was younger is I would hear people preach on relationships and how important they were and all this stuff, and I would just say, man, I don't need that. Just give me the car, give me the girl, and give me a good job that I don't have to work too much for, but still pays me really well, so I can go out and enjoy the rest of everything else, right? I used to want people to envy me. It's what I wanted. I wanted people to look at me and go, man, look at that girl. I don't know what's up with him, but she's hot. Which I ended up still getting that. So, you know. Yeah! And she's not even here! Up there, yeah, y'all, all of y'all book and tell her. You're like, man, God props to him. So I got the girl, right? But that's the thing, is we think in those terms. But here's the truth. Is what I discovered earlier on through the help of other people, helping me come to see this, and then just through my own life, just reflecting on it. Here's what I think. If you haven't figured this out yet, you will certainly figure it out. Some of you, I think, already have. Others of you, you'll figure it out at some point in time. Here's the deal. One of these days, you're going to get up and you're going to look in the mirror. And you're going to look back at yourself. And you're going to ask yourself the question, does any of this matter? You're going to ask yourself, whether you're successful or unsuccessful, whether you own a ton of stuff or whether you don't own anything at all, you're going to look at your life one day and you're going to go, is any of this matter? And the truth of the matter is if you live your life for yourself and for yourself alone, then no, it doesn't. I don't care how much money you have in retirement, I don't care how nice your car is, how nice your house is, no matter what you own, how successful or unsuccessful your life has been, if you don't open up and have close personal relationships, they help make it worth it. That's why God says the most important thing is your relationship with me and your relationship with people. Remember, Adam was in a state of perfection. He had everything at his disposal that he could want. I mean, he's walking with God in the cool of the day. None of us even know what that's like because we all live post-Genesis chapter 3. And yet God says, you're alone, Adam. And it ain't good. So here's what I want us to do this morning. Here's your second piece of homework. Here's your call to action. And as I do this, I want to invite all of our adult small group hosts to go ahead and make your way up to the front. They're just going to line up here along the front. And as they're coming, I simply want to encourage you with this. This week, we are launching our spring semester of small groups. Yeah, y'all can go ahead and come. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I made that clear. My fault. Y'all go ahead and come and line up right here across the front. And as they're coming, we're launching our spring semester of small groups. Our small groups are called journey groups. And we do that not just because we thought we'd throw the title of our name of our church on the front of groups, and just say, yeah, we'll call them journey groups. No, we did it purposefully. Because the purpose of our groups is to, yeah, there you go, y'all span out, you're going to drop out OCD, not specific piece over here. All the other OCD people realize that. But here's the thing. The purpose of our groups is that you journey through life together. It gives you the opportunity, and it removes any and all excuse from anybody in the room to say, well, I just couldn't connect with that church. Baloney. We're removing all of those obstacles from you today. We have groups that will meet all throughout the week. We even have a group that's just going to meet right after church on Sunday morning because that's like some of the best time to be able to meet. Some people can't meet the rest of the week. We have a group on Sunday right after church. We have a group Sunday night. We have a group Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So what I want to encourage you to do is to put this message into practice. Say, you know what? I need to develop those personal relationships. I know what God has to say about it. I've been alone. I've felt alone. And whatever it is that's keeping me from doing it, I'm going to work through that. And I'm going to get involved with a small group. I'm going to open myself up. I'm going to bear my life. And we are going to go through life together. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being isolated. I'm tired of it not being good, no matter what other good things may be happening in your life. So what I want to invite our small groups to do, they're going to introduce themselves to you. Perhaps if you don't know who they are, they're going to tell you when their group is going to meet and where their group is going to meet, and just very quickly about their group in about 30 to 60 seconds. And actually, Pastor Scott, if you can help me with the microphone, and you come too, because you lead a group on Wednesday nights. So, Pastor Scott, go ahead and start us out with family night on Wednesday nights for the adult group on card. And what I want you to do is I want you to take out that card, and I want you to take a moment as I pray, and then Pastor Scott can come and dismiss us. But I want to encourage you to take out that card, and I want you to check off a group that you want to be a part of. Don't check off like 3 or 4, but I mean like check off like 1 that you want to be a part of this semester. And I want you to go and I want you to deliver that card to that small group host and say, I'm being a part of your group this semester. If you can't find one, you can drop it in our giving boxes at the back of the auditorium. We'll make sure and get them into their hands. Also, I forgot, I can't leave myself up. My wife and I are also leading a small group on Sunday nights at 6 o'clock. Tonight, we're going to be meeting at our house for a Super Bowl party. So if you don't have anywhere to go, come and see me. We're just going to do like finger food. Just bring whatever food you want. Kids can come, and hopefully we'll have a great time tonight. We're going to do that at our house, but otherwise, we're going to be meeting the same time and place as Linda's group here on Sunday night. We're going to be here at the church at 6 o'clock. So if you want to be a part of that small group, we'll be available afterwards as well. I hope that you understand this morning the importance of this idea of connection. As we've answered this question, I think very adequately today, what does God have to say about this tension of connection? God tells us it's not good for us to be alone. And so what I hope that you will do through this method, is through our small groups, is that you will connect. That I hope today that we have removed any and all excuse that anyone can ever use to say, well, I just couldn't connect with anybody in that church. There are plenty of opportunities for you to be able to get involved and to be able to connect. And each one of our small groups, this is what our small groups are going to do this semester that is unique to any other semester if you've been in one before. Our small groups are going to be implementing themselves the 4 core behaviors. We're going to emphasize inviting. We're going to emphasize connecting. We're going to emphasize coaching. And we're going to emphasize involvement. You're not just going to come to a small group and sit down and just listen to somebody teach you. You're going to be engaged with ministry. You're going to be given responsibility. You're going to be given ownership of your group to be able to interact and lead things and do things in your group that maybe you haven't been able to do in the past. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask Pastor Scott to come as I pray for you. And let's ask God to bless our time this semester and to bless our time. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful, Lord, that you loved us so much. Lord, that you came and you delivered your Son and you gave yourself for us so that we could be in proper relationship with you. Lord, I thank you that our lives are changed through relationships. And that, Lord, if we want to grow spiritually, we need to grow relationally. And I pray, God, that you would help us to grow in connections with one another. Let us sense the importance of it. Let us know and remember what you think about it. Lord, as we go through this exercise today, and as we think about what keeps us from developing close personal relationships, I pray, God, that you would help us to be able to work through those issues with others, in relationships with others. May we learn to open ourselves to you and to others, that we might grow to become the people and the church that you want us to be. In Jesus' name.